Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to Clovis Community College. Today we're here for our third and final speaker of the semester, and we're here to welcome Yosimar Reyes to our campus. So please help me welcome Yosimar Reyes.
Cute. Okay, you can hear me? Great. Buenas tardes, how's everybody doing? Okay, awesome. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Yosimar Reyes. I'm a poet, a writer, a storyteller, and I'm really excited to share a little bit about the work that I'm doing right now, and my poems and my work basically of what I explore. I don't know if you could tell and stuff, but I'm a little gay and stuff, which is super cute, you know, because we match outfits. I'm also undocumented, so if you've never seen an undocumented person before, look how amazing we are. Imagine being so cute, they make it a crime. That's why I like to explain people. So I'm gonna start with a little bit about, I'll start off with the poem. That way you know, like, okay, he's legit, his poems are kind of cool. And if you don't, boss, I'm sorry for you. This poem's titled, My Revolutionary, and it goes like this. You tell me you don't like the city, that these buildings, this concrete numbs the senses, cages the spirit, and baby, your spirit was meant to be free. You, my love, were born to be revolutionary. Free like the tobacco you offer to blow blessings, free like palabras sagradas que salen de tu boca, y las rimas femeninas y masculinas that you buzz here on stage. You are my revolutionary, not a guerrero but a healer, because in times of conflict, mi rey, you heal. And more than body, I must agree with you that you are spirit, because more than your flesh, I'm in love con el corazón que tienes. You are the reason why I love men with noble hearts, the reason why I don't mind sharing a bed with someone. For men like you, I will ride 1,000,000 BARTs, get lost in Oakland and find your house beneath the brightest star. Mi vida, you come from tierra, where the spirits of those who fail to cross over roam. You come from el desierto, but baby, we all know you are not deserted. You got me, and together we have 4 spirits, like the 4 directions. You have the creator behind you. You're his creation, his masterpiece. And in this journey you are traveling, you have managed to leave your footprints in my heart. I carry your breath in my hair, your teachings in my true spirit. You are fluid, como los ríos que nuestra gente ha cruzado. You remind me that the only possessions we have in this world are our bodies and our voice, and the combination of the two must be used to honor the spirits of los antepasados. This life is a ritual, and in its sacredness, I'm so glad I'm able to hug you. You are my revolutionary, and as you make your transition back home into the arms of your mother, into the lips of your father, I ask that you take a memory of me with you. I ask that you take this poem with you. Plant these en la tierra que te vio nacer, en esa tierra que ha sido bautizada con la sangre sagrada de nuestra gente, and I will assure you that wherever you be, this love will sprout in you, como el sol por las mañanas. This poem will shine on you. Now go to wherever home is, knowing that in San Jose you leave a brown boy that has nothing but love and respect for you. In the meantime, I will stay here in this cage, in this city, singing and singing till the system crumbles, till borders break, till the earth shakes, and our people become awake. I will be here singing and singing into the day in which we're all free to return home. So a little bit about my background. I told you I'm undocumented, so this is going to be a little bit about immigration and stuff, and also about, you know, being queer and stuff, because, you know, a lot of people are like, oh my God, how did you survive so many multiple oppressions? I'm like, no, it was lit, you know? That's what made me a writer, because I was like, listen, nobody's really talking about these experiences. Nobody's really talking about where I come from, especially growing up working class. And I felt like that's something that I wanted to explore through my writing. So I think that's the lens that I'm coming in at this work. So I'm going to try to go a little bit about all the stuff that I kind of been formatting. And right now I work for an organization called Define American. We're a media and culture organization that focuses on amplifying and centralizing the voices of the undocumented immigrants. But I don't know if you could tell, but undocumented people are so popular right now. We're like all over the news. We're so popular, everybody's trying to catch us. So I think right now that's what the work that I'm doing. And for me, like, I'm also interested in doing it from a comedic perspective, because I feel being undocumented is so much, it's really, really funny, because I'm like, oh my God, it should be a sitcom. Because you go through all these things of explaining to people, why don't you have a status? And all people are like, oh my God. You know, a lot of people ask me, like, why don't you just become legal? Go to the back of the line. And you know what? People have been doing this research for more than 10 years now, so when people ask me that, I'm like, listen, you should just Google it. Because at this point, I already Googled it too, and trust me, there's no solution. So do that work, do the homework yourself. Google saves lives. So, you know, you'll learn something about the immigration system if you don't know why people can't become legal. I'll start off with this presentation really fast, and then I'll get a little bit into the work that I'm doing. I titled this presentation, "We Have Never Needed Documents to Thrive." The two old people that you see right there, that's my grandmother and my grandfather, and I love them dearly, and they're the reason why I'm in this country. They were the visionaries of bringing me here. So I'll take a little bit of my journey, and then we can get into it. And then if you have questions, comments, concerns, complaints, you know, you can tell me, and I'll be like, I'll answer them. Okay, we never needed documents to thrive. So this is me being cute at the U.S. Immigration Office, you know, and Obama signed this executive order called Daca, which means Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. That's something that I have. So basically, Daca is a two-year work permit and protection for deportation. It's not a status. There's no status. It's nothing. It's really basically, I think in synopsis, basically I pay the government $500 every 2 years for them to not deport me. So basically, I'm creating American jobs, you know what I mean? So you're welcome. So my journey starts in 1998. I always tell people that in 1998, the cosmos collided, the Aztec gods came, Cuauhtémoc, Moctezuma, all the prophecies came true. They collided, the energies, the sun and the moon and all that mess, and I was born. So I was born in 1998. I was born in the state of Guerrero, Mexico. That's southern Mexico. For those of you who do not know, that's Acapulco. I was born there, and I migrated to, this picture is a picture of my two siblings and my brother, my older brother. I like to show this picture because it's the picture, you're starting to see the beginning of a mixed status family, meaning families that have different statuses, right? My two sisters are citizens, and me and my brother are the only undocumented one. So we're navigating this family dynamic, and I think that happens to a lot of people who come from immigrant backgrounds or first generation immigrants. I do a lot of interviews, and you know, people love to, right now specifically, because everybody wants to hear from a dreamer. So I do a lot of interviews, and this is one of the questions I always get asked, like, how did you cross the border? You know, my story's not that exciting because I opened my eyes and I was here, like, oh, okay. So that's why I tell them, like, which version do you want? Like the real story or like the scholarship story, you know? Because if I'm gonna get a scholarship, I'm about to milk that, you know, like, yes. It was really tragic, you know. It was, you know, it was a herd of us, you know, 100 of us crossing, and only 3 of us made it, you know. I'm gonna tell you some Beowulf epic kind of novel stuff, but it's not that exciting. I opened my eyes while I was here. My first memory in the United States was actually reading Clifford the Big Red Dog. And I was in kindergarten, and I just kept thinking, damn, why is this dog so big, right? Like, what's up with this dog? Like, I was like, oh my God, Americans are so exaggerate everything. So yeah, that's my first memory, kindergarten, Clifford the Big Red Dog. And since then, I love literature, I love reading. After that, I was like, oh my God, I wanna have a big ass dog like that. It didn't happen, because, you know. 1991 is actually the year we migrated into the United States. I was 3 years old, so again, I don't remember anything. I don't even remember anything from Mexico. Actually, recently so I'll tell you this story. Recently, through Daca, they have this program called advanced parole, in which you can apply to actually go back to Mexico on educational purposes, for work purposes, or for humanitarian reasons. And so I applied to a program, and I got in. And this is before the current president that's in office got elected. And I got a chance to go back to Mexico. So after like 25 years, I finally went back. And, you know, I'm a poet, so we romanticize everything, you know, and also I'm also gay, so we build expectations out of nothing, especially in relationships. So I was like, you know, I'm going back to Mexico. It's gonna be so amazing. I'm gonna figure out my land. I'm finally gonna belong somewhere. No one's gonna tell me, go back to your country. You know, no one's gonna tell me you're stealing jobs. I'm gonna go back to Acapulco. Like, the ocean's waves are gonna embrace me. You know, the sun's rays are gonna whisper, like, welcome home, you know? And I had all these outfits, you know, because, you know, outfits are necessary for the selfies. And then I got there and I was like, it's hella hot here. It's so hot. They got no Wi-Fi. Like, there's no Wi-Fi here. These Jordans are about to get real messed up. Like, No, I couldn't. I only went back to Mexico to realize how Americanized I already had become because I was so used to these commodities, right? And I was like, oh my God, that's so crazy that maybe, you know, somehow I just became so used to these commodities and luxuries that we have in this country that now I felt this huge clash with going back. And Mexico is so beautiful. I think one of the things that I hate the most is this idea that we get taught in the US that our countries are developing, that somehow we don't have intellectual capacity, that somehow we're not contributing to the culture of a global perspective. And that's what I hated so much. I'm like, yo, Mexico's dope. Like, we got a pyramid next to Walmart, you know, like that's dope. Like, that's hella civilizations, right? What do we got here? You know, like, Six Flags, you know, like it just doesn't add up. So for me, it was like more honoring the fact that civilizations have existed longer than the U.S. And I think it's also like this kind of paradigm in which we grow up to be really nationalistic and centric into the U.S. So I landed in Eastside San Jose, and the Eastside San Jose, like I feel like any Eastside in any city was super working class. Most of the people on my block were undocumented. So like when people tell me like, how did you come out of the shadows? Like I had those kind of parents that don't shun you away from trauma, you know, because they didn't have parenting classes back then. So they tell you the truth, and you know, you're 5, and they're like, you don't have papers. You're like, I don't know what that means. Like it means you're gonna struggle, you know? So that's my kind of parents, you know? They didn't have, but you know, that's a beautiful thing because, you know, now that I'm going to therapy, I'm like, oh, shoot. That's where that comes from. That's why I act like that, because my mom didn't teach me that. So this is my 3 cousins and me and my brother. We're like the first 5 that crossed. And we're about this age when we're crossing. Again, I don't remember anything. But I do remember the hood. It was super fun. Even, you know, because I feel like when you grow up in the hood, you don't think like, oh, wait, people are not supposed to live like this, you know? Like, you know, like maybe people don't get shot every day, you know? It's normal. It's like, okay, whatever, just dodge it. So I grew up in this really intense environment, and especially in the early 90s, I feel like the early 90s gang culture was everywhere. Like everybody was in a gang. But I grew up in this kind of environment. And what was interesting for me growing up in the environment is that I've always been like a super feminine boy. Like I've always, like people were calling me gay before I even knew what that meant, which was very interesting for me to adapt because, you know, now, you know, when people say like, oh, go to walk down the street and people call me something, I'm like, oh, thank you for acknowledging it, right? Like at least it's evident. But before I was like, I had a really hard time, identifying with that. But then one of the cool things that I loved about growing up in the hood is that I grew up with a bunch of hood-ass girls, right? And one of the beautiful things about growing up in that is that I have a friend that's a teacher, and he was telling me how a lot of times, he's a 3rd grade teacher, a lot of times in 3rd grade, the people that take the boys are acting up so much that they take the attention away from the girls because everybody's focusing on the troublesome boys. But there's a slow violence that girls commit to each other. That's why you hate that girl named Destiny from 8th grade, you know, because she like called you something that scarred you for the rest of your life. And I like to think that I was trained by those girls. That's why I became a poet, but I use my words for good now. You know, I'm not out here trying to break people's spirits. But it was a defense mechanism. So it was me and like 10 girls with a bag of hot Cheetos. That was my upbringing. These are my grandparents. One of the beautiful things that I always talk about, specifically with undocumented labor, is the fact that as undocumented people, we're not seen as agents of our own narratives. Oftentimes, we use undocumented stories to grow sympathy from a citizen audience in order for you to get you to vote or to take action or to be advocates for us. But I like to believe that there's more power in showcasing undocumented people as people that are, besides adversity, are still thriving and are still excelling, who are creating small businesses, who are contributing, regardless of everything that's happening. So one of my things with my grandparents is that when they came, they were older, and because they didn't have access to the language, we didn't have a social security number, they had to start thinking in an entrepreneur mindset. So what ended up happening is that my grandparents saw somebody recycling bottles bottles and cans, and realized that that's how you can get money. And so they created their own business, and between the two of them, they would wake up at 6 in the morning and go through the neighborhood's trash cans and develop a whole ecosystem in which they would recycle. So now when people tell me like, oh, it's cute to be sustainable, I was like, bruh, we were doing that way before it was trendy. We were trying to save the planet, you know, with the check too. You know, we were shopping at Goodwill. We were reusing those little plastic bags. We were recycling bottles and cans. Like, my grandparents are super eco-green, and we should put them on a campaign, you know, like put poor people on an eco-green campaign, because we're out here trying to save the planet while still getting a check. And the beautiful thing that I also tell about this story is the fact that a lot of times when you see them, people in this labor, you like to think that like, oh my God, they're doing this job that's so demeaning and devalued. But you know, if you ask my grandma, she's really proud of the fact that she's a woman that can sustain herself, even if she has to do this. She's really proud, and I think that's the agency that I don't want people to lose from undocumented people and undocumented workers. Like, yes, the job, sadly, because we live in such a culture that devalues the worker, or devalues people who do janitorial work, who are cleaning houses, and we view them, sadly, that it can be demeaning. But I can assure you that those undocumented workers that are doing that job are doing it with so much dignity and so much agency that I think it's important to respect that. Again, I do a lot of interviews. Another question that they always ask me is like, are you afraid? And you know, I don't know if I'm afraid, because I feel like through my work, I've been meeting so many amazing undocumented people that are breaking in different areas. You know, people who are in med school, people who are like doing so many amazing things, that gives me hope. I'm like, wow, people are out here really striving and achieving their goals. That doesn't make me feel it doesn't make me feel like I'm alone. If anything, I feel like the country's missing out on these talented individuals because of this kind of racist policies that we like to promote. But I mean, are you afraid? I'm like, bro, we all should be afraid, because we're all in danger, right? Like, bro, they're gonna kick me out, and then they're gonna come after somebody else. So I think it's something to be really aware of. 1994, I am about. 1984, Prop 187 it's promoted in California. I don't know if some of y'all remember that this was a huge thing. And I'd like to say this was the blueprint to a lot of these anti-immigrant laws that we're not seeing propagated in Arizona and Texas. Even now on a national level, the same rhetoric. You can watch a commercial from Governor Pete Wilson, using the same rhetoric that we now use in the campaign for Trump. Like, the same talking points, the same video, like you can play back to back. So I feel like right now, in terms of immigrant sentiment, we're back to 1994, in which we're blaming undocumented people for the ills of the country, when in fact it's not factual. In 1994, this is what California was scared of, right? So they developed this kind of proposition that will outlaw services for undocumented kids would not be able to go to public school. Undocumented people were not supposed to go to public hospitals. So the services were not something that were going to be provided for us. And the sad part is that passed, and it went to the Supreme Court, and then it got stalled there. But imagine a culture that's telling you that we're the enemy, specifically in California, when there's so many jobs in agriculture and different sectors that are being labored by undocumented workers. Enter 2006. I am in high school, and I was always like the bitter immigrant. That's also why I kind of started writing, because I would probably go insane if I didn't have writing. So I'm in high school. All my friends are starting to drive, and they have their cute little cars. And I'm like, oh, I can't drive because I can't get a license, because California didn't grant undocumented people licenses. So I would see my friends drive, and I would be so mad. I'm like, oh, I hope they crash. Simple things like that. Or like when my friends would go so one of the things I so hate is when my friends tell me about, oh my God, we're going to TJ for the weekend. And you're just sitting there like, I hope they don't let you back in. I hope you stay there. So now I develop a policy with my friends. If you're telling me you're going to Mexico for the summer and you're not bringing me a gift, at least a piece of sand or something, like, you're xenophobic and I hate you. and you're not my friend. So 2006 is like the time in which I'm in high school. I'm a little bitter immigrant, but now there's a momentum for immigration reform. I hear these flyers being passed out. I'm from in Eastside San Jose about this march that's happening. It's called the Great American Boycott. If you don't know anything about May 1st, which just happened yesterday, May 1st is also known as this International Workers' Day, in which we honor the workers, right? And out of that, that was aligned with the kind of immigration. And so in 2006, May 1st, 2006, I go to my first march. It's one of the biggest demonstrations in San Jose. Everybody comes out. There's thousands and thousands of people all over advocating for a system that grants authorization to undocumented people. Sadly, this is when we start seeing the politicization of the undocumented experience. Undocumented people are made into political pawns, in which now Democrats are saying like, oh, we're gonna pass something and help you out and whatever. And I think that's what Obama won, because he garnered the Latino vote based on immigration. And sadly, one of the things with the Obama administration that happened is that Obama is the president that deported more undocumented people than any other president. And actually, the deportation machine that we have now through the new current administration is something that was handed down to him. So now all those policies are kind of being inflicted now. Enter 2012, nothing happened between 2006 or 2012 in immigration, so now we are in 2012. But now what's happening, interesting, is it's a cultural moment. Now you cannot escape the fact that there's 11 million undocumented people in this country. Now in American consciousness, we have learned a new word, and that's the word dreamer. So now when anywhere you go, you say like, I'm a dreamer, people automatically kind of already know what they look like. And 2012 was kind of like the cultural moment that we had, in which now undocumented people are on the cover of Time magazine. And the beautiful thing about this cover is the fact that they're all from all over the globe. There's not, I think one of the things that we're doing right now is that we like to associate immigration with the Latino issue or with the Mexican issue. So when people see a Latino, they automatically assume, oh, well, let me see your papers, right? But in fact, research shows that most Latinos are US born. There's not that many. Most Latinos who are in the country are US born, so meaning that they're citizens. And so I think right now, the way that we're viewing undocumented people is from a racialized lens, in which we think they look a certain way. And now what we're trying to do is break that and showcase more stories from undocumented people from Asia, undocumented people from the Caribbean, undocumented people who are white, right? We have all those people exist. 2018, now this is the year in which we're really, really fighting. We know that Daca got rescinded, so meaning that program is eventually going to end. Eventually it's going to end, so meaning that leads me to lose my work permit. After my work permit expires, who knows what, I'm not going to be able to work. I'm not going to be able to, do what to make a living. But you live all these people in limbo who have careers. I personally graduated from San Francisco State with a bachelor's in writing, with an emphasis in creative writing. So for me, I'm lucky in the fact that my work does not necessarily align, because it's creative work that I can still continue to figure out a way. But now you have a bunch of people who have professions, who are working in offices, who are lawyers, who have all these professions that they cannot exceed in if their work permit expires. 2018, now we're really popular. We're all over the media. Britney loves us. Ellen loves us. Kim K loves us. We're all dreamers. It's a thing. I was talking about how it's interesting now. Before, they used to say that sex sells, but now what's selling is actually social justice. So if you look, there's a cultural capital to you looking hella down and like, oh yes, I support this. Now we've seen this whole phenomenon with Starbucks, right? With Starbucks, the incident they have in Starbucks, now to the point that they close down their stores to do a training in which how they're learning how to treat customers. So I think that's awesome. I think that's how that we're holding these companies accountable to supporting different issues. But what do we do after that? And how do we not make that something that's fashionable, but actually something that's integrated, something that we're also protecting one another. Specifically now with the immigration policies that are being introduced, that are excluding people, all the travel bans and all these stipulations. Right now you're hearing the word chain migration, which is basically a term to talk about like bringing your family into the country. So it's a lot of coded language that's rooted in racism. So this is what's interesting now because that I want to do as a storyteller, specifically someone that's undocumented. I feel like oftentimes I've done so many interviews with people and they want to cut and edit me to be super tragic. And I would always tell people, like, I'm from the hood, like, we don't cry, we don't cry for nothing, like, you're not supposed to cry. And they, like, want to break me into these ideas that maybe if I cried more, or if I bled, or somehow if I was just super, super tragic, then maybe Americans would love me and embrace me because, sometimes I feel like I want to put the videos of the undocumented people in these videos that are crying or the way we get molded and edited and put it, the Sarah McCollum song, like We Are the Angels with the perritos. I feel like you can do that hand in hand because I feel like that's the way we're trying to garner American sympathy by showing undocumented people struggling so much. And for me as an undocumented person, I really like to take into account the undocumented audience and what happens when you see someone in your predicament constantly suffering and constantly in these states of panic and fear. Somehow you get embedded with that messaging that your life is going to be conditioned to be these things. And for me, I'm more interested in doing work that's more uplifting, more funny, and showcasing undocumented people in a different light. What this headline says, California fruit will die on the vine after ICE raids, labor warns. And I like the synopsis that this person puts it in. Headlines that happen when white Americans are more likely to empathize with fruit than brown people. And I think what's very important about immigration is that we're not looking at it from a racial justice lens. Immigration is just looked as a Latino issue. But if you look from a racial justice lens, you look at immigration policies, you look at immigration history from the Chinese Exclusion Act to Japanese internment camps to the Bracero program, you're seeing that there's only a certain type of immigrant that are from a different, a certain demographic that are being targeted or exploited. And so I think we've always had a turbulent history with immigration, and I think it's nothing new. I think it's good to go back and look at those policies and that history. So what's next? I think the thing with undocumented people is that everything's so uncertain. You don't know what's next. You don't know what's happening today. Yesterday, another news happened that 7 judges are suing to end the Daca program. But the Daca program is like, it's working. Like, we're contributing so much money into the economy. We're professionals, but for some reason, some people are like, no, we got to take that away. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. And for me, like as an artist, as a poet, like I'm more interested in decentralizing undocumented voices from a political conversation and making it human, making it more real, and reminding Americans that undocumented people are just like the average American, living below the poverty line, are just as any other American trying to find a job. And I think while we're fighting each other for these scattered resources, we're not really looking at the top and the people who are benefiting from our labor and from the fact that we're fighting. So this is kind of like the background to the work that I'm doing. And I feel like I just give you like immigration 101. So you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of information. I'm not gonna remember none of that. But now I'm gonna go into some of the work that I'm doing. So read some of the stories. Is that cool? Okay, cute. Let me see. I'm working on a one-man show. It's called Prieto. I don't know the direct, oh cute. I don't even know, oh they got water. I don't know the direct translation in English, but it means like dark skin in Espanol. And so this play is basically like about me growing up queer and undocumented in the hood in Eastside San Jose. I read some of it a little bit earlier. So the characters are basically my family. And so I'll read a different excerpt from this script. Here. And then if you have questions, comments, we can do that. So this is me being cute, looking like a snack. you can feel free to check out my website. My Instagram is a lot more ratch than this talk. So if you want to follow the work, it's there. So I'm going to start with this piece. It's called Dirty. Mommy used to bathe us twice a day. She used to scrub the darker parts of our bodies as to wash away poverty. She would take out her piedra pomo and scrub our elbows and our knees. She scrubbed our little hands, took the dirt beneath our fingernails, and warned us to stay clean. She would often say, ¿qué va a decir la gente? Esa mujer muy elegante y sus mocosos bien mugrosos. She would neatly part our hair, and when one of her little pelitos did not listen, she would place saliva in her hand and made it stay in place. She didn't want me to be like Tony, who always smelled like pee, whose mocos used to dry up under his nose. They used to call him piojoso at school because you could see the lice jumping like there was a party on his head. Más vale que no se te peguen esas costumbres, gordo. A ver que ven que hueles a chivo. She would then run to the fridge, take out a limon and slice it in half. She would rub each half under my armpit. The burning sensation would make me scream. Estate quieto. She ironed my shirts, pants, underwear, and socks. Mommy, who was left alone to raise two brown boys, dark as dirt, made sure that the rest of the world never had an excuse to call us dirty. It's the day of my 5th grade graduation. Mommy makes me wear a green suit she bought from La Segunda. I hate it. I already know all the other kids are going to be wearing something brand new, and here I am in an ugly Segunda suit. Mommy's getting me ready, combing my hair. Hi, papi, you're looking so big now. You're going to be a man. When you're older, you're going to take care of me. Ain't nobody trying to take care of your ass. Mira lo que te compré. She runs to the kitchen and brings out 2 huge balloons filled with helium. I love them, but all I can think about is, I don't want to be a man. I want to be like my mommy, pretty, filled with all the confidence to navigate the world, even though she doesn't speak English. At the ceremony, I'm surprised how many people are actually digging my suit. All my teachers and the classmates say the same thing. You're going to make such a handsome man. I already know that. I guess that's what happens when you put a little boy in a suit. After the celebration, it's back to business at home. My abuela changes from her changes into her regular day-to-day attire, sweatpants, and a t-shirt. She needs to go sell bottles at the recycling center. Mommy says that because she's old, we gotta help her. I have no time to change from my suit. And besides, I feel like today, out of all the rest of the days of my life, I have the right to forget that we're poor. I tell Mommy, I'm only gonna help if I can wear my suit and bring my balloons with me. She agrees. I push the shopping cart filled with bottles with all my might. I grip my balloons tightly in my right hand and imagine I have the strength of a man like my grandfather who breaks walls and windows when he is drunk. I push the cart and it catches momentum. Pretty soon the cart is rolling by itself and drags me along with it. Before I know it, the cart is catching its own speed and I no longer have control over it. It's going too fast and my feet cannot keep up with it. I hear Mommy shouting, "Gordo, deja de estar jugando." But I'm not playing. The cart has taken a life of its own. It rolls until it crashes into the pool and all the bottles come crashing down. My shoes are covered in glass. The balloons slip out of my hand. Everything stops. Cars speed by and people stare out their windows. I imagine everything they could be saying. Look at those poor women. Look at that poor kid. Should we call CPS? This is the first time I become ashamed of myself and our situation. I run away past streetlights and cars. I run home telling God, I don't want to be a man. I don't want to be a man. Let me stay a little boy. My body is just like my father's, chaparro y moreno. I look in the mirror and see him, though I only know him in pictures. When my mommy calls me beautiful, I cannot help but wonder if she means it. How can she find beauty in a man that resembles a heartbreak? I have grown into a man with no guidance, created blueprints to my masculinity out of bearing witness to its violence. My body is just like my father's, with the same ability to bruise an eye, punch a wall, become enraged. I was raised in a culture where walking in my skin is already a sign of power. Often I wonder if this queerness I embody is a byproduct of its absence or the way the universe asks my mother's forgiveness. Tony doesn't have a dad. Neither do I. When Tony gets mad, he shouts. When I get mad, I cry. We play kickball in the parking lot. Kick like a girl, he says. I shrink. I wonder where Tony learned to be a boy. I want to ask him, who taught you how to kick? Watch me, he says. The red ball flies past my head, a kick too high to me to be able to reach. Now you try. I feel small next to him. He rolls the ball. I watch as it makes its way towards me. I close my eyes, pray to God, then my leg kicks the ball past the sky. I want to show him that I am a boy. I swing my leg back. I release forward and hear a loud thump. I open my eyes. The ball flies past Tony, crashes into Norberta's window, and she shouts, "You stupid kids!" We both laugh. Tony puts his arm around my neck, and I wonder if this is what being a boy feels like. So most of these stories are kind of like from the perspective of a third grader, because I feel like third graders are cute because they're still like nice, but they could be really mean, super mean. And especially hood-ass third graders, because, you know, they'd be knowing everything. I'm like, how do you know that? I'm like, oh, my mom's taught me. So this next story that I'm reading is about my neighbor. Again, I was talking about sustainability. And one of the things that I love about poor people is the way that we just make things happen. My mom used to shop. Anybody shopped at Goodwill before? It's popping. It was, you know, before it was hipstery. The Goodwill was the place where you got all your brand name clothes and stuff. My mom used to buy like if they didn't say Old Navy in big old letters, it wasn't worth those $3. So my mom was very like that. And then I had a neighbor who I use a lot in my stories because I feel like she was just so hilarious. She was sustainable. In other words, she was really cheap. So she didn't believe in buying anything. So she would steal like, you know, ketchups and straws and napkins from McDonald's. Like if her house was like sponsored, like if you can see the sponsors in her house, she would like sponsored by Carl's Jr. This sponsored by McDonald's. This is sponsored by whatever store, right? So I was like, oh, I love her. She's so intense. But what they did in our neighborhood is they built a new a store, and it was a Goodwill store, and they put it right across the street from our apartment complex. And the idea was that all those broke people at the apartment complex were just gonna shop there. But Norberta, being innovative, entrepreneurship, she saw a vision, she had a business plan. One of the things San Jose is known for, if you've ever been to San Jose, is our flea market. It's popping, it's lit, we got everything there. So Norberta was like, listen, at night, the truck has no security and people just dump their clothes there. If we go in, we can just get the bags, search through them, and we can sell this at the flea market. It made sense to us. So this is a story of us, and it's called Goodwill Trucks. Dedicated to my neighbor. There's a Goodwill truck down the street. Norberta tells us that at night people leave bags outside to donate. No security, she says. She schemes this plan to gather all the neighborhood kids and help neighborhood kids so we can help her find cute things, search through the donations. Our payoff is that we get to find old toys and we get to be bad. Abuela decides that she wants to join in on the fun. So as soon as it hits 9 o'clock, we all meet at the courtyard and she tells us the game plan. Okay, pay attention. We're gonna walk down the street and you're gonna search through the bags. Only take the things you need. Do not be greedy. Norberta leads the way while my abuela walks by her side as her sidekick. There's seven of us walking behind them. We're super hyped just thinking of all the cool things we're about to come up on. We get to the truck and it's like a gold mine. We can't believe people will donate all these things. There are all kinds of clothes, books, toys. We want to take it all, but I have to be smart. Isn't this stealing? I asked my abuela. Well, no, because people donate these things for people like us. Now stop asking questions. I continue searching through the plastic bags. All the kids go for the toys, but I like books and pick up a couple I can read when my abuela leaves me home alone. I turn around and I see Norberta carrying a giant teddy bear. It's like those bears are hella hard to win at the carnival. Es mío, she shouts. We are all mad because she dips on the bear and decides she actually wants to take it home to decorate her living room. In defeat, we all turn back carrying the bags of things we picked up from the old truck. We have clothes, toys, shoes, books. As we're walking back, we hear a siren bleep. La policía! We scream when we make a run for it. We run like roaches when you turn the lights on. We hide behind cars. We jump into bushes. We run past the street. Even my abuela runs. We turn back and we see Norberta's big body running, carrying the giant teddy bear. She won't let go of it, but it slows her down. Before we know it, the cop car has a bright light shining on her. On the megaphone, the cop says, "Ma'am, please put the bear down." Norberta doesn't really speak English, but she knows she's in trouble. She slowly places the big teddy bear on the cement, and as the cop walks toward her, she tells him, "Ay, es que no sé inglés. Yo pensé que era gratis." The cop leaves her with a warning, and we all watch Norberta as she walks back towards us. The teddy bear sits lump-sided on the cement, her face in defeat. We all feel bad for her, but before we can say a word, she says, "Mañana vamos a encontrar otra troca." So that's my cute neighbor, Norberta. So I graduated from San Francisco State, and I majored in English with an emphasis in creative writing. I love books. I love literature. I think when my grandma was working, she would leave me home, and I love reading, so I read all these books. And then I was like, listen, maybe I could write some of these stories. Maybe I could write about these characters. And you know the house on Mango Street? That was so dope, because I was like, oh my God, that's about such a hood-ass kid, and these stories. But mine's a little bit, the stories that I'm writing about are a little bit more like grounded, really rooted in poverty, because I feel like that's something that we don't talk about a lot in literature. It's not really explored, and like the urban experience of immigrants in these kind of situations, and the things that we have to kind of go through in order to make it. This next story that I'm gonna read is new. I'm still trying to conceptualize it, and it's a little grotesque because I read it all the time and people get all like, that's gross. But I feel like it's real. I read this article about like, one of the things that's very common in the hood is it's specifically in apartment complexes. You know, one of the things that I like to talk about specifically when you grow up poor is that somehow you feel like poverty is your fault. Somehow you feel like you haven't worked hard enough, that you deserve it, that this is going to be the rest of your life, and this is going to be the reality. And one of the things that happens with undocumented people, specifically about, like you grow up with this idea that your parents want you to be everything. Like, you can be the president of the United States of America, right? But when you're poor, you're like, bruh, shut up, that's not gonna happen. Our dreaming becomes really limited. And oftentimes what happens with our parents who are immigrants is they police your dreaming. When I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a writer, everybody was like, maybe you should think of thinking of another job. Maybe learn how to be an electrician. That'll pay bills and all that. And that's fair. I think that's an honorable job, but that's not what I wanted to do. So what I started realizing is the reason that my parents were telling me not to dream too big is in a way to protect your kids, right? Because if you dream too big and your dreams are not achieved, then you become disillusioned. And the worst thing that you can do is be disillusioned and feel like somehow your life is always gonna be the same. So this story is basically about, in third grade, it's called Roaches, so it's about cockroaches, and people are like, oh my God, I'm gonna get so triggered. So if you don't like roaches, or you're one of those people like, oh, that's fear factor, that way you learn. I read it to a bunch of high school students, and they were like, ew, that's so gross, but then they're like, oh my God, that's so true. And so it goes like this. Tell your mom you have a roach in your ear. The doctor orders me as mommy sits patiently observing how he shines a light inside of my head. Mami, dice que tengo una cucaracha en la oreja. Mommy looks embarrassed. I don't know why. Is there a reason why this might happen, he asks. I think about how our apartment is infested with roaches. At night they come out and take over our kitchen, but we don't complain to the old Filipina landlord whose English is just as broken as my mother's because she might call the cops on us. Dice el señor que por qué me pasó esto. I translate to mommy. She doesn't respond. It's like she forgot how to understand Spanish too. I can hear the buzz in my head as the roach is trying to dig deeper in an attempt to hide from the light. It has made a home in my head over a week, but I never told mommy because she's too busy working to be bothered with these things. At first, I thought it was water for playing in the shower too much, so I spent my day walking with my head tilted, thinking that over time, like our messed up water faucet, drop by drop, my ear would go back to normal. It was the school nurse, a gentle white lady with the hair the color of a carrot, that told mommy she needed to take me to the ER. That night, after mommy came home from work, we took bus 25 across town to catch bus 70 to the nearest hospital. A cotton ball pressed against my ear as an attempt to diminish the pain. Mommy sat in the bus lump-sided, bobbing her head, trying to fight off sleep. I stood alert and watched as the only people left on the ride were homeless men or one or two señoras heading home after a late shift. "We're gonna have to pull it out," says the doctor as he reaches for the metal tweezers. He presses the metal against my ear, and I can feel how the points of the tweezers push through my auditory canal. I focus on mommy instead of the pain. She smiles at me, not from amusement, but an apology. It's that same smile she gives me when she can't make it to my school performances or when she can't buy me a uniform. Her arms are folded across her chest. She attentively watches as the doctor maneuvers his way into my ear. He is the teacher, and it's like she wants to learn how to pull roaches from ears in the event that this might happen again. "Ouch," I whine. The doctor pulls the metal tweezers, and I can see the roach's little leg. "It looks like we're going to have to take it out in pieces," the doctor mutters. He wipes the tweezers clean and goes back in again. Like a gold miner, he scratches through the cave of my ear, trying to find the remains of the roach. In school, we learn how to spell archaeologist, a long, complicated name for someone that likes to dig dirt for bones. One by one, he begins to pull out leg after finally getting the whole thing out. He places the remain on the blue paper towel. I look at the body spread across the napkin, dismembered. The pieces of the body remind me of Lucy, the oldest bone fossils dug up by archaeologists. Well, looks like it was a baby roach. It was so small, that's why it got in there. Poor baby. I wonder if mommy's gonna miss him, I think to myself. Tell your mom she might want to start fumigating or cleaning the house thoroughly so this doesn't happen again. But mommy does fumigate. She mops the floor with so much Clorox, you have to open the doors and windows to air it out. She even gives advice to the other señoras on how the best solutions to kill the roaches. Sometimes it's hard to tell if she's trying to kill us with the roaches too. "Dice el señor que ya estoy bien, ya nos podemos ir, mami." Her apologetic smile turns into relief. She picks me from the exam table and lets my feet scratch the floor. "Thanks you very mucho, mister," Mommy says in the only English word she learned from the factory. We leave the fluorescent lights of the hospital. I turn back and watch as 6 patients wait in the crowded room for their names to be called. I wonder if they too have roaches in their ear. We walk down the street where the night sky has taken over. 45 minutes pass and the bus finally arrives. We ride the bus all to ourselves. I press my body against mommy because the AC is on too high. We go home. As sleep is taking over, I can sense when mommy puts a cotton ball in each and one of my ears. The next day, she wakes up at 5 in the morning and goes to work. So that's my mom. So yeah, I think with these stories, I'm more interested in capturing like these kind of narratives that are kind of like not really explored, because I feel like it's, even though it's, you know, like I feel like those little things, these experiences represent something, and I learned a lesson from which one of these narratives. I'm gonna read this last one, and then we can open it up to questions if you have any. So recently, I don't really like to read a lot of tragic, like sad work, because I feel like it's, I don't know, it's not something that I'm interested in doing. But recently, I think this is something that this is some new work that I'm exploring, that I'm writing. Specifically, I think as undocumented people, because one of the sad things that happens is the way that your family gets divided. My grandfather self-deported to Mexico about 3 years ago, and he recently passed away. And I think the most tragic part of that is not being able to go to his funeral. This is like the man that raised me, who, you know, he was such a patriarch. My grandfather was such a patriarch that I feel like God was like, you're such a patriarch, I need to make justice in the world, so I'm gonna make your grandson hella gay. And that's how the universe balances itself out. But I wrote this piece because the last time I saw him was when I went to Mexico, and And I wrote this after he passed away. So I'll leave with this, and then if you have questions, we can go into them. It's called Atoyac, a place by the river. When my grandfather carried me in his back into the United States, he made sure to remind me of the place we left behind. He spoke poetically of our municipio. He told me histories of heroes like Lucio Cabañas in the beautiful terrain in Guerrero. The last time I saw my grandfather was in Mexico. After 25 years since I arrived into this country, I was given permission to return on advance parole. I submitted countless paperwork so I could finally go to know the place so many people tell me to go back to. I took a bus from Acapulco to Atoyac de Alvarez, Guerrero. As I boarded the bus, a man that had given me a lift to the bus station told me to take off the airport tags for my luggage. They're gonna know right away you're not from here. Don't speak English. Just like any other American, my head was consumed with news of Guerrero being a violent place, headlines of decapitated bodies thrown over freeway overpasses, to 49 students disappeared into the mountains by our own government. While choosing my seat, all I can think of was, why did my grandfather choose to return here? The bus driver announced that he would be collecting a fare, 80 pesos. I secretly took out my iPhone and from the bottom of my life quickly calculated the amount in dollars. Equals $1, just $4, I think to myself, being aware that it's a lot of money for a lot of people here. As the bus takes off, I look out the window. Acapulco is packed with mercados and vendors in the street. People sell anything from seashells scribbled with phrases such as bonito recuerdo de Acapulco to ceramics painted in folkloric colors and nice to be out of the scorching heat. The drive into Atoyac is about 2 hours. I stay vigilant of my surroundings because I'm far away from home. The bus passes municipal after municipal, and I watch men and women that look like my family board and unboard. I wonder if they can tell that I'm not from here. Out the window, I see kids pot-bellied and dark just like me in a picture my mother keeps from way before we crossed the border. As we arrive into Atoyac, the bus stops. There is a checkpoint on the road. I look out the window and I see a group of military men with rifles. They order the bus driver to open the door. My heart begins pounding. They board the bus and randomly select people to open their bags. I pray they skip me. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they take me off this bus? After inspecting the bus for drugs and weapons, they ordered the driver to keep going. I thank God and choose that it be best I pretend to be asleep as a way for people to stop bothering me. We finally arrive in Atoyac. The bus station is crowded with people, and I make sure to stay close to my belongings. Before I left Acapulco, I called my tia, and she said she would meet me at the station. I look out the window and from different directions, but all the women look alike. I don't remember my tia because I was 3 years old when I left. Gordo, I hear a woman shouting. I turn around, and there in a turquoise shirt walks a woman who introduces herself as, Soy tu tía Chela. I hug her like I know her. Ya eres tú un hombre, she exclaimed. We drive off to her house where my grandfather has been waiting for me anxiously. It's been 3 years since my grandfather's stuff deported here. While in the United States, he made our lives unbearable with his drinking. Ya me quiero ir a mi tierra, mijo, he complained every time he drank. I ignored him and made my mind up that it was just another poor excuse for him not wanting to be responsible. As I walk into the house, there in the kitchen table sat my old man. I run to hug him, and we both let out a loud cry. I hug him, trying to engulf my body into mine like water falling on water. He looks more tired now. His body shrunk. The bags under his eyes are heavier. My old man always with a toothpick in his mouth. Siéntate, mijo. Vamos a platicar. I take a seat. My tia goes into the kitchen and begins to heat up tortillas. I take out my iPhone and show him pictures of my grandmother and my tias and all the festivities he has missed since he left. He smiles, and I can tell his eyes he wishes he could come back. The heat in Atoyac is different from Acapulco. It is dry, and the mosquitoes won't help the situation at all. Abuelo falls asleep in a hammock. I sit in the patio looking out into our town. The moon and stars are brightly lit as the sound of grasshoppers take over the street. I can't believe I'm here, the place where I was born, the place I hear so many stories about. For so long, this place has been the myth to me, and I can feel its heat against my skin. Then I think, what if they don't let me back into the United States? What if I still have to stay here? Fear rushes through my body, and I turn to my abuelo, his whole body swinging back and forth on the hammock. In the United States, he used to sleep on the living room couch, and all this time he spent there, he never knew what a bed felt like. I watch him sound asleep, and I feel guilty for allowing myself to let fear consume me. Who taught me how to fear my whole man? Where did I learn that this place is not home? What is my real fear of returning, and what am I holding on into the United States? I walk over where my abuelo swings. The night is so hot, so I lay out a bed sheet and lay the floor next to him. I fall asleep and pray, please God, don't let me get stuck here. Please God, don't let me get stuck here. I never vocalized my queerness to my grandfather. In my head, I made up an excuse that I did this to protect him. He had enough in the world to worry about that I didn't need him to battle the inner turmoils of having a queer grandson. I tend to do this with my family, keep secrets from them to protect them, but deep down I know I do it to protect myself. I don't want to feel like a disappointment. After all, I'm a product of their sacrifice. My whole purpose for coming to this country was to make them proud. I'm a Mexican man expected to live up to my masculinity. My grandfather never brought it up, but the thing about queerness is that you know when it's around you. My queerness is not relevant when I lay down with another man. It's in every fiber of my being. My queerness rests in my hair, in my vocal cords, and my mannerisms. There's no way of suppressing it because inevitably it will manifest. They say kids and drunks always tell the truth, and if this proves to be true, then my grandfather was the most honest man I knew. We're sitting in the living room. I am mad because this is the third time of the week that my grandfather is drunk. The last night he drank like this, he ended hospitalized, and we had to watch over him day in and day out. I'm scolding him, asking him to just stop. Doesn't he see when he drinks, he makes everyone's lives miserable? I have never spoken to my grandfather like this. After all, if you're Mexican, there's a certain level of respect you maintain for elders, specifically if those elders are men. My father gets mad, and when the voice that thunder, he shouts, "You should be grateful me and your grandmother took you in because you're a bastard child." It is there that I start to feel for again. Staying outside of the house where we first moved into the U.S., my mother stands on one end of the yard, my grandmother on the other end. She asks me, "Choose who you want to stay with." I choose my grandmother because since young, I knew my mother to be fractured by her own demons to look after me. I'm 4 again, wondering why my father never bothered to claim me. My grandfather's voice interrupts, "Tú nunca vas a ser hombre." It's funny to me because when I become upset, I turn into my mother. Her hands shake, her eyes fill up with tears, and she's too dignified to let you know where she's hurting. So instead of admitting that you hurt her, you wounded her, she lets out words that would cut deeper. I respond, "Well, if being a man means being a drunk like you, then I pray to God I stay exactly as how I am." My grandmother sits quietly next to us. She knows I am hurt. She places her hand on my shaking lap and tells me, I will love you no matter who tells you you are right or you are wrong. So after, I get all depressed because I watch the news and I'm like, oh my God, maybe I need to go watch reality TV. So instead of watching the news, I watch really trashy TV in order for me not to consume everything that's happening. So I felt like after all these stuff that was happening with undocumented people, I wanted to give them love. I'm like, oh my damn, can we have I love you undocumented people day? Somebody give us a cookie, buy us a Build-A-Bear, something, because, it feels hard when you wake up every morning, you're like, we don't want you, get out of here. Every morning, I'm like, damn, what did I do that was so bad? So I wrote this poem, and I'll leave you with this. The poem is called "A Poem So the Weight of This Country Does Not Crush You." Some days you may wake up sad. Some days you may wake up frustrated. Some days you may wake up tired. Some days you may wonder if it's worth it. Some days you may question your own growth. Some days you may think how immense the world is to be caged in this country, to be subjugated to all this abuse. Some days you just want to breathe. And baby, I am here to remind you to sit in those moments, to sit in that whirlpool. But just know there are people like me picking up the load when you can't. That there are people like me pushing so the weight of this country does not crush you. There are people like you who will fight when I can't. And we will take turns pushing against these walls. I got your back and you got mine. In the scheme of things, does anything else matter? Even if our fight is unfruitful, we will depart with our dignity intact. We will depart knowing that this country is losing a prized possession. This country is losing the gift of our resilience. We will watch them as they tear into each other's skins and thank the heavens we never turn into beasts like them. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much for having me. God bless America.